Story 1. The Phantom Convoy. Marcus Chen had been hauling freight across the western states for 17 years, and in all that time, he'd never missed a delivery deadline. His Kenworth W900 was his second home, a rolling fortress of steel and diesel that had carried him through blizzards, dust storms, and every kind of weather the American highway system could throw at him. On the night of October 14th, 2019, Marcus was running a load of industrial equipment from Salt Lake City to Sacramento, taking Highway 80 through the Nevada desert. The sun had set 2 hours earlier, and the stretch of road between Winnemucca and Lovelock was as desolate as highway gets. Marcus had his CB radio on, listening to the scattered chatter of other truckers somewhere in the distance. The night was clear, stars spread across the sky like diamonds on black velvet. His dashboard clock read 11:47 p.m. when he first noticed the headlights in his mirrors. At first, Marcus thought nothing of it. Another trucker, probably running the same route, maybe hauling produce or livestock. But as the minutes ticked by, he realized something was off. The truck behind him maintained an exact distance, never getting closer, never falling back. Marcus adjusted his speed, dropping from 65 to 60 miles per hour. The truck behind him matched perfectly. He accelerated back to 68. Again, the distance remained constant, as if an invisible rope connected them. Marcus grabbed his CB mic. "Hey there, driver behind me on 80 eastbound, mile marker 112. You running a convoy or something? Come back." Static crackled through the speaker, but no response. He tried again, changing channels, sweeping through the frequencies. Nothing but empty air and the hiss of dead channels. That's when he noticed the second truck. It appeared in his left mirror, pulling up alongside him in the passing lane. Marcus glanced over, expecting to see a driver's cabin lit by dashboard lights, maybe catch a wave or a nod. Instead, the cab was completely dark. No running lights on the dashboard, no glow from instruments, nothing. Just a black silhouette of a truck keeping perfect pace with him. The exterior lights worked fine, headlights, marker lights, clearance lights, all burning bright. But inside, absolute darkness. A cold finger of unease traced down Marcus's spine. He pressed the accelerator, his Kenworth's engine roaring as he pushed past 75 miles per hour. The dark truck matched him effortlessly. The one behind maintained its exact distance. Marcus's hands tightened on the steering wheel, knuckles going white. He tried the CB again, his voice tighter now. "I don't know what kind of game you guys are playing, but back off. This isn't funny." A third truck appeared on his right side. Then a fourth pulled up behind and to the left. Within minutes, Marcus found himself boxed in by 7 identical trucks, all maintaining perfect formation around him. They were all the same make and model, older Peterbilt 79s, classic long-nosed trucks from the late 90s, their chrome catching the moonlight. Every single cab was dark inside, no drivers visible, yet they moved with precision that would make a military convoy jealous. Marcus's heart hammered against his ribs. His mouth went dry. He tried to brake, but the moment his speed dropped, the truck behind him closed the gap slightly, not threatening but definitely controlling. When he accelerated, it fell back to its original distance. They were herding him, keeping him at a specific speed, in a specific lane, heading in a specific direction. The desert stretched endlessly on both sides, darkness broken only by the occasional scrub brush caught in the sweep of headlights. No exits appeared. Marcus knew this stretch of highway. There should have been a rest stop about 5 miles back and a truck stop coming up in another 7. But the road just continued, straight and empty, mile after mile, with no landmarks he recognized. He grabbed his phone. No signal, not even a single bar. The screen showed his GPS app, but the map was blank except for a thin line representing the highway, stretching into nothing. No towns, no roads branching off. Nothing but that single line and a blue dot representing his truck, moving steadily forward. The Phantom Convoy maintained its formation for what felt like hours, but could only have been 20 minutes. Marcus's breathing came fast and shallow. Sweat soaked through his shirt despite the air conditioning running full blast. He considered ramming through, forcing one of the ghost trucks off the road, but something primal in his brain screamed that would be a terrible mistake. Then the lead truck began to slow. Marcus had no choice but to match its speed. 65 became 55, then 45, then 35. The entire formation decelerated in perfect unison. Marcus's speed dropped to 25 miles per hour, then 15. His truck crept along the highway, surrounded by the silent convoy. And then, directly ahead, he saw why they de-slowed. A massive accident scene appeared in his headlights. 3 semi-trucks lay twisted and burning across all lanes of the highway, their trailers split open, cargo scattered across the asphalt. Flames leaped 30 feet into the air. The heat washed over Marcus's truck even from 100 yards away. Tire marks scored the pavement, telling the story of desperate braking, jackknifing, and catastrophic impact. If he'd been traveling at highway speed, he would have plowed directly into the wreckage with no time to stop. Marcus slammed on his truck, shuddering to a complete halt about 50 feet from the inferno. His hands shook violently on the steering wheel. He sat there, frozen, staring at the flames, understanding with crystal clarity that he should be dead. At 65 miles per hour by the time he'd seen this accident scene, it would have been far too late to stop. The phantom trucks held their positions for maybe 30 seconds. Then, one by one, they pulled away. The one in front pulled off to the right shoulder and disappeared into the darkness. The ones beside him accelerated and vanished ahead into the night. The ones behind peeled off and were gone. Within moments, Marcus sat alone on the dark highway, his truck idling, the burning wreckage ahead of him the only proof that any of this was real. His CB radio crackled to life. A voice, old and weathered, spoke through the static. "You're welcome, driver. Watch the road ahead. Always watch the road ahead." Then silence. Marcus sat there for 10 minutes before his hand stopped shaking enough to pick up his phone. 3 bars of signal appeared. He called 911, reporting the accident. Highway patrol arrived 40 minutes later, along with fire trucks and ambulances. The officers told him he was lucky. The accident had happened only 12 minutes before he arrived. The drivers of 2 of the trucks had survived. If anyone had come through at highway speed right after the collision, they'd have added to the body count. Marcus told the officers about the trucks that had boxed him in, forced him to slow down. They looked at each other with the expression cops get when they're talking to someone they think might be in shock. There had been no other trucks, they said. Their dispatch had been monitoring traffic cameras for the past hour. Marcus's truck had been the only vehicle on that stretch of highway for miles in either direction. Later at the truck stop in Lovelock, Marcus talked to an old-timer who'd been driving these roads for 40 years. The man listened to his story, then nodded slowly. "The Phantom Convoy," he said. "Lost drivers, legend says. Killed in a pileup back in '97, same stretch of road. Some folks say they're still running their route, looking out for the living. You're not the first driver they've saved, son. Probably won't be the last." Marcus finished his run to Sacramento, but something fundamental had changed. He still drives trucks, still hauls freight across the western states. But now, late at night on empty highways, when he sees headlights that match his speed too perfectly, when trucks appear in his mirrors that seem just a little too synchronized, he doesn't question it. He adjusts his speed, attention to the road ahead, and whispers a quiet thank you to drivers who never stopped working, even after death took them off the clock. Sometimes salvation comes from the most unexpected places, delivered by guardians who understand the road in ways the living never will. Story 2. The Mile THAT REPEATS. Jennifer Hartwell specialized in overnight runs through the Appalachian region, hauling automotive parts from Detroit to various manufacturing plants scattered through Kentucky, Tennessee, and North Carolina. She'd been running these routes for 12 years, enough time to know every truck stop, every way station, and every tricky mountain grade by heart. Her 2018 Freightliner Cascadia was equipped with every modern convenience: GPS navigation, satellite radio, automatic emergency braking, and lane departure warnings. Jennifer prided herself on being a professional who used technology to stay safe and efficient. On March 3, 2021, she was running a load of transmission components from Detroit to a plant outside Knoxville, taking Route 23 south through Kentucky. The weather was typical for early March: cold, overcast, with patches of fog in the valleys. Jennifer had left Detroit at 4:00 p.m., planning to drive through the night and arrive by morning. By 1:30 a.m., she was deep in the Kentucky mountains, winding through terrain that rose and fell in endless curves. The fog had thickened considerably, reducing visibility to maybe 100 feet. Jennifer had slowed to 45 miles per hour, her fog lights cutting pale cones through the mist. The highway was empty. She hadn't seen another vehicle in over an hour. Her satellite radio played classic rock, Bruce Springsteen singing about being born to run, which struck her as appropriately ironic given her profession. She passed a distinctive landmark, an old barn with a collapsed roof on the left side of the highway, advertising faded mail pouch tobacco painted across its weathered boards. Jennifer had passed this barn hundreds of times over the years. It marked the approach to a particularly tight series of curves, followed by a long straightaway. She downshifted, taking the curves with practiced ease, then accelerated as the road straightened out. 3 minutes later, she passed the mail pouch barn again. Jennifer blinked, confusion cutting through her road-weary focus. That couldn't be right. The barn was miles back. There wasn't another tobacco barn with that specific advertisement anywhere on this route. She checked her GPS. It showed her position as steadily progressing south on Route 23, the blue line of her path extending behind her, the destination marker still 180 miles ahead. She shook her head, attributing the déjà vu to fatigue, and continued driving. The tight curves approached. She downshifted, navigated them, accelerated on the straightaway. Her odometer clicked forward. The GPS showed movement. Everything seemed normal. Then she passed the mail pouch barn for the third time. Jennifer's stomach clenched. This wasn't fatigue or déjà vu. She grabbed her logbook, checking the time. 1:47 a.m. She'd been driving for 14 minutes since first seeing the barn, but according to her route, she should have covered at least 10 miles, putting her well past this section of highway. She'd de-driven those curves 3 times. She de-passed that barn 3 times, yet her GPS insisted she was making forward progress. The fog pressed closer, seeming to thicken with malevolent purpose. Jennifer's hands gripped the steering wheel tighter. She tried her CB radio. "This is Hartwell Transport, southbound on 23, mile marker." She glanced at the marker as she passed it. "Mile marker 37. Anyone out there hearing me?" Static answered, punctuated by odd clicking sounds that followed no pattern she recognized. She passed the barn a 4th time, then a 5th. Each time the same sequence, the barn appearing on her left, the tight curves ahead, the straightaway, then the barn again. Jennifer's breathing quickened. She checked her fuel gauge, quarter tank, exactly where it had been 15 minutes ago. The gauge should have dropped noticeably. Her odometer showed increasing miles, but the fuel consumption didn't match. On the 6th repetition, Jennifer decided to stop. When the straightaway came, she pulled onto the shoulder, set her parking brake, and killed the engine. Silence flooded in, broken only by the tick of cooling metal and the faint hiss of fog moving past her windows. She sat in the darkness, forcing herself to breathe slowly, trying to think rationally about an irrational situation. She pulled out her phone. No signal. The screen showed 1:52 a.m. Only 5 minutes had passed since she'd last checked, though it felt like at least 15. She opened her photo gallery, scrolling back to yesterday. Pictures of her kids, her husband, her dog. Real things. Solid things. evidence of a world beyond this impossible stretch of highway. Jennifer restarted the engine. The diesel rumbled to life, a comforting sound in the oppressive silence. She put the truck in gear, released the brake, and pulled back onto the highway. The barn appeared exactly as scheduled. The curves, the straightaway, the barn again, 7th repetition, 8th, 9th. Jennifer felt panic rising in her chest like cold water. She tried turning around, but the road wouldn't let her. Every spot where she might execute a U-turn vanished in the fog before she could reach it. She tried stopping again, waiting to see if the loop would end on its own. She sat for what felt like 20 minutes, but when she checked her phone, only 3 minutes had elapsed. The 10th time she passed the barn, Jennifer noticed something new. A figure stood beside it. Tall, dressed in dark clothes, featureless in the fog. The figure didn't move, didn't wave, just stood there watching her truck roll past. The sight sent ice through her veins. She accelerated hard, pushing her truck faster than was safe in the fog, but the curves forced her to slow, and when she completed the circuit, the figure was still there in exactly the same position. On the 11th repetition, the figure was closer to the road. On the 12th, it stood at the road's edge. On the 13th, it stood in her lane. Jennifer screamed, slamming the brakes. Her truck's emergency systems kicked in, ABS pulsing under her foot, the Jake brake roaring. She stopped inches from the figure. It stood in front of her grill, illuminated by her headlights. Not a person. A shape that suggested human form, but wrong in ways her eyes couldn't quite process. Angles that didn't make sense. Proportions that hurt to look at. It raised something that might have been an arm and pointed to the right, to the fog-shrouded darkness beyond the shoulder. Jennifer's rational mind screamed that following directions from an impossible entity was insane. But her rational mind had stopped having useful input several loops ago. With trembling hands, she turned the wheel and drove off the highway into the fog, into the darkness, onto what felt like no road at all. The truck bounced and jolted. Jennifer gripped the wheel, expecting to hit a tree or tumble into a ravine. But the ground stayed relatively level. She drove blind through white nothing for what might have been 30 seconds or 30 minutes. Then, like passing through a curtain, the fog disappeared. She was on Route 23. The road ahead was clear, stars visible overhead, fog completely gone. Her GPS showed her at mile marker 52, 15 miles south of where she'd been trapped. The clock read 2:03 a.m. She'd lost only 16 minutes, though she'd lived through hours of repetition. Jennifer pulled into the next truck stop and sat in the parking lot until dawn, drinking coffee with shaking hands, checking her GPS every few minutes to make sure it was still showing normal movement through space and time. She completed her delivery to Knoxville, but she called her dispatcher before heading back north. She told him she was taking Route 75 from now on. She didn't care if it added 50 miles and an extra hour to her runs. Route 23 through Kentucky was off her route list. When he asked why, she said the road conditions were unpredictable. He accepted that without question. Jennifer still drives trucks through the Appalachians. She's still professional, still safe, still reliable. But she's learned that modern technology, GPS, computers, satellite communications, all the tools that connect us to the wider world mean nothing when you slip between the cracks of reality. There are places where the rules change, where the road loops back on itself, where something waits in the fog to trap the unwary. She'd found one of those places and escaped only through the bizarre mercy of something that shouldn't exist. Now, whenever fog rolls in thick during overnight runs, Jennifer watches for landmarks that repeat. She watches for barns with faded tobacco advertisements, and she watches for figures standing beside the road that aren't quite human. Because she knows the truth that some truckers only learn once. Not all miles on the odometer take you forward. Some take you sideways into places adjacent to the world we know. And sometimes the only way out is through, guided by entities whose motives remain unknowable, whose nature defies understanding, who control the roads in ways no Department of Transportation ever mapped. Story 3. The truck stop that wasn't there. Raymond Torres had been driving solo for 31 years, running long hauls across the southwestern United States. His Peterbilt 579 was his pride and accomplishment, customized with chrome accents and airbrushed murals depicting desert landscapes and eagles in flight. Raymond knew the truck stops between Los Angeles and El Paso better than he knew his own neighborhood. Every diesel pump, every restaurant, every shower stall, he'd used them all 100 times. On August 22, 2020, Raymond was hauling refrigerated produce from the Imperial Valley to Phoenix, running Interstate 8 through the California desert. It was brutally hot, even at 9:00 p.m. The digital thermometer on his dashboard read 104 degrees. His fuel gauge showed just under a quarter tank, cutting it closer than he liked. But there was a truck stop coming up in about 40 miles where he pulled up. Betty's Desert Stop, mile marker 87, right at the Arizona border. He'd been stopping there for 20 years. The desert stretched dark and empty on both sides of the highway. Traffic was light, just the occasional car passing in the opposite direction. Raymond had his air conditioning maxed out and Waylon Jennings on the stereo, singing about lonesome highways and hard living. The mile markers ticked by, 51, 52, 53. Phoenix was still 140 miles ahead, but Betty's was close now. Mile marker 87 appeared in his headlights. Raymond started to brake, looking for the familiar glow of Betty's fuel pumps and neon sign. The truck stop was always visible from a mile away, a beacon of light in the desert darkness. But tonight he saw nothing. The exit was there, exit 87, exactly where it should be, but no lights beyond it, just darkness. Raymond frowned. Maybe a power outage. But Betty's had backup generators. In 20 years, he'd never seen the place completely dark. Still, the exit was there. He took it, following the off-ramp down and around to the right, where the service road led to the truck stop. His headlights swept across the parking lot, and what they revealed made Raymond's breath catch in his throat. Betty's Desert Stop was there, but wrong. The building looked decades older, paint peeled and faded, windows dark and dusty. The fuel pumps were there, but they were ancient, the kind with mechanical number wheels instead of digital displays, the kind that hadn't been used since the 1970s. No lights anywhere, no cars, no other trucks. The place looked like it had been abandoned for 40 years, but it couldn't have been. Raymond had fueled here just 6 days ago on his last run-through. The place had been normal, clean, modern, busy with drivers grabbing fuel and food. He talked to Betty herself, the owner, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s who'd run the place since inheriting it from her father. Raymond pulled his truck into the lot and parked, leaving the engine running and headlights on. The beams illuminated the building's front wall. The sign was there. Betty's Desert Stop, but weathered and faded, several letters missing. The windows were intact but filthy, impossible to see through. The glass door hung slightly ajar. Every instinct told Raymond to get back on the highway, to limp to Phoenix on his remaining fuel and figure this out in daylight. But his practical side noted that he had maybe 50 miles of fuel left, and Phoenix was 140 miles away. He needed to fuel up here or risk running dry in the desert. Maybe the inside. Maybe the main building had lost power, but the pumps still worked. He grabbed his flashlight and climbed down from the cab. The desert heat hit him like a physical force. No breeze, just still, oppressive air that smelled faintly of decay. His boots crunched on the parking lot asphalt as he approached the building. The sound seemed too loud in the silence. The door creaked when he pushed it open. Raymond stepped inside, his flashlight beam cutting through darkness thick with dust. The interior was frozen in time. The counter was there, an old-style cash register sitting on top. Shelves lined the walls, still stocked with products. Candy bars in wrappers Raymond hadn't seen since childhood, soda bottles instead of cans, cigarette brands that didn't exist anymore. Everything was covered in dust, undisturbed for decades. But that was impossible. This building, this truck stop, had been modern and functioning less than a week ago. Raymond moved deeper into the building, his flashlight revealing more impossibilities. A calendar on the wall read July 1977. A newspaper on the counter, yellowed and brittle, was dated July 23, 1977. The headline spoke of a heat wave affecting the Southwest. Raymond picked up the paper with shaking hands. It felt real, actual old newsprint, not a reproduction. A sound from the back room froze him in place. Movement, footsteps. Raymond's heart hammered. He wasn't alone in this impossible place. The beam of his flashlight wavered as his hands shook. He should run, get back in his truck, leave this place. But he couldn't seem to move. A figure appeared in the doorway to the back room. Raymond's flashlight beam found her face. A woman, maybe 30 years old, wearing a style of clothing from the 70s, bell-bottom jeans, a floral print blouse. She looked at Raymond with eyes that reflected his flashlight beam like an animal S. "Are you lost?" Her voice was wrong, layered with echoes, as if multiple people spoke the same words with slightly different timing. I need fuel," Raymond managed, his voice hoarse. "My truck, I need to fuel up." The woman smiled, but the expression didn't reach her eyes. "The pumps work, they always work. We're always here for drivers who need us." "Where's Betty?" Raymond asked. "Betty Sanders, she owns this place." The woman's smile widened impossibly far. "Betty hasn't owned this place for a very long time, not since the accident, not since the fire, but the stop is still here. We make sure it's here. For drivers like you, drivers who need help." Raymond backed toward the door. The woman didn't follow, just stood in the doorway watching him with active eyes. "The fuel is free," she called as he retreated. "It's always free. You just have to pay in other ways." Raymond ran. He bolted from the building, across the parking lot, and climbed into his cab. His hands fumbled with the controls, getting the truck in gear, accelerating out of the lot and back toward the service road. In his mirrors, he could see the building behind him, dark and abandoned. But now there were lights in the windows. Dozens of figures stood inside, pressed against the glass, watching him leave. He took the on-ramp back to Interstate 8, his truck's diesel engine roaring as he pushed it hard, trying to put distance between himself and that impossible place. His fuel gauge read 1/8 of a tank. Not enough to reach Phoenix. Not nearly enough. But 5 miles down the highway, another truck stop appeared, one he didn't recognize. Bright lights, modern pumps, several trucks parked in the lot. Raymond took the exit with enormous relief, pulling up to the fuel island. A teenager came out of the building, waving and smiling. "Evening, sir, fill it up, please," Raymond said, his voice still shaky. "And tell me something, how long has this place been here?" The kid shrugged while starting the fuel pump. "Just opened 6 months ago." "Development. You're not the first driver asking that. Weird thing is, this spot was empty for years. Nothing here but desert. But I guess the county finally approved commercial development." Raymond nodded, but his mind was reeling. This truck stop hadn't existed on his run 6 days ago. He would have noticed. But it was here now, solid and real and blessedly normal. He paid for fuel, used the bathroom, bought coffee, engaging in mundane transactions that grounded him back in reality. When he got back in his truck, he pulled up GPS on his phone and scrolled back along Interstate 8 to mile marker 87. There was no exit there. No truck stop marked on the map. The service road didn't exist in the GPS database, but it had been there. He'd driven down that exit ramp. He'd walked through that building. He'd seen those figures in the windows. Raymond completed his delivery to Phoenix, but he couldn't shake what had happened. 2 days later, on his return trip, he specifically watched for mile marker 87. He slowed down as he approached. The exit was there, the sign reading Exit 87. But beyond it, in the service road area, there was nothing but desert scrub. No building, no parking lot, no evidence anything had ever been there. He stopped at a rest area and did some research on his phone. It took an hour of searching, but he finally found it. A news article from July 1977. A truck stop at mile marker 87 on Interstate 8 had burned to the ground. The fire had started in the fuel pumps, rapidly spreading to the main building. 3 people had died. The owner, Elizabeth Betty Sanders, her husband Frank, and their daughter Rachel. The article included a grainy black and white photo of the truck stop before the fire. It looked exactly as Raymond had seen it, right down to the sign. The truck stop had never been rebuilt. The property had remained abandoned, too contaminated with fuel residue to develop. Eventually, the state had removed the exit ramps, erasing the location from the highway system. But sometimes, the article mentioned, drivers still reported seeing lights there late at night, especially in summer, especially during heat waves. Raymond still drives Interstate 8. His routes haven't changed. But he makes absolutely certain to fuel up well before mile marker 87, and he never drives that section with less than half a tank. He's learned that some places don't entirely leave when they burn, when they die, when they're erased from maps. They linger in the margins, reaching out to travelers who get too close, offering services that come with prices best left unpaid. The highway has memory, and that memory sometimes manifests for those desperate enough, tired enough, or unlucky enough to need what the dead still offer to the living. Story 4. The Voice on the CB. Daniel Kowalski ran dedicated routes for a pharmaceutical company, hauling temperature-controlled medications from distribution centers in New Jersey to hospitals and pharmacies throughout New England. He'd been doing it for 9 years, always solo, always reliable, always professional. His 2019 Volvo VNL was equipped with the latest refrigeration technology, GPS tracking, and security systems. The cargo he carried was valuable and required constant monitoring. Daniel prided himself on never having lost a load, never being late, and never having a security incident. On November 8, 2021, Daniel was running a load from Edison, New Jersey to Portland, Maine, taking Interstate 95 north through Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Massachusetts. It was a Sunday night, traffic was light, and the weather was clear and cold. He'd left Edison at 6:00 p.m., planning to drive straight through and arrive by 4:00 a.m. His trailer's refrigeration unit hummed steadily, maintaining the precise 38 degrees Fahrenheit required indications. Around 10:30 p.m., somewhere in central Massachusetts, Daniel's CB radio crackled to life. Most truckers kept their CBs on, monitoring Channel 19 for traffic reports, accidents, or police activity. Conversations ebbed and flowed, sometimes chatty, sometimes silent for long stretches. Unit northbound on 95, Volvo VNL with reefer trailer, you got your ears on. The voice was male, older, with a faint accent Daniel couldn't place. Daniel grabbed his mic. "Yeah, this is the Volvo, go ahead. Just wanted to give you a heads up, driver. There's a situation developing ahead of you. You're going to want to be careful the next 50 miles or so." "What kind of situation?" Daniel asked. "Accident, construction." A pause filled with static. "Not exactly. Just trust me on this. Keep your doors locked. Don't stop for anything. Don't pick up hitchhikers. Don't pull over if someone tries to flag you down." Daniel frowned. "Who is this? You a cop?" "Someone who's looking out for you, that's all you need to know. There are bad people working this stretch tonight. They're targeting commercial vehicles, especially ones with valuable cargo. I'm guessing you're hauling something worth stealing, am I right?" Daniel's grip tightened on the steering wheel. How would someone know that? His truck looked like any other reefer unit. There were no markings indicating pharmaceutical cargo. "I appreciate the concern, but I'm just hauling groceries." A dry laugh came through the speaker. "Sure you are. Look, I'm trying to help you here. In about 15 miles, you're going to see a car on the shoulder, hazard lights flashing, someone waving for help. Don't stop, it's a trap." "How do you know all this?" Daniel demanded. "Because I've been watching them set it up. I've been following their communications. These people are organized and they know what they're doing. Just trust me. 15 miles, silver sedan, don't stop. The radio went silent. Daniel tried calling back. Hey, whoever you are, come back. I want more information. No response. He switched channels, sweeping through the CB bands. Nothing but routine trucker chatter on 19, silence everywhere else. Daniel's mind raced. This could be legitimate. Cargo theft was a real problem, and pharmaceutical loads were prime targets. Or it could be paranoid nonsense from someone with too much time and too active an imagination. He called his dispatcher, reporting the CB conversation. The dispatcher checked with the company's security team. No reports of organized theft activity in Massachusetts tonight, but they advised Daniel to stay alert and not stop unless absolutely necessary. 14 miles later, Daniel saw the car. Silver sedan, right shoulder, hazard lights flashing. A woman stood next to it, waving both arms. Even from a distance, she looked distressed. Daniel's foot hovered over the brake. Every decent instinct said to stop and help. But the CB warning echoed in his mind. He drove past. In his mirrors, he saw the woman watching him go, her arms dropping to her sides. She pulled out a phone. Calling for help, Daniel thought. Legitimate breakdown, and he just left her stranded. Guilt twisted in his stomach. 5 miles later, the CB crackled, the same voice. Good decision, they're regrouping now. They weren't expecting you to pass by. That was a real person who needed help, Daniel said into the mic. That was an actor, the car is fine. In about 3 miles, a van is going to try to box you in, force you to slow down or stop. White panel van, no windows. When you see it, don't let it get beside you. Speed up or slow down, whatever it takes. I'm calling the state police, Daniel said. Go ahead, but by the time they get here, it'll be over one way or another. Daniel did call 911, reporting possible criminal activity on I-95 northbound. The dispatcher said they'd send units, but response time could be 15 to 20 minutes depending on where their nearest trooper was positioned. Daniel was on his own until then. The white van appeared exactly as predicted. It came up fast in the left lane, pulling alongside Daniel. He could see 2 people in the front seats, both wearing dark clothing. The van matched his speed perfectly. Daniel accelerated. The van accelerated. Daniel tried to slow down to let them pass. The van slowed with him. His CB crackled. They're trying to get you to the next exit. There's a rest area in 6 miles. They've got people waiting there. Miss that exit. Stay on the highway no matter what. Who the hell are you? Daniel shouted into the mic. How are you seeing all this? I told you. I'm watching them. Now focus. The van is going to try something aggressive. Be ready. The van suddenly swerved right into Daniel's lane, trying to force him onto the shoulder. Daniel hit his horn and accelerated hard, his Volvo's engine roaring. He pulled ahead of the van, putting 3 truck lengths between them. The van dropped back, and for a moment Daniel thought they'd given up. Then a pickup truck appeared ahead of him in his lane, driving well below the speed limit. The van accelerated behind him. They were boxing him in, front and back, trying to control his speed and force him off at the next exit. Daniel's training kicked in. He'd taken defensive driving courses, knew how to handle aggressive drivers. He dropped lower gear, accelerated hard to close the gap with the pickup, then swerved into the left lane at the last moment, blowing past the pickup at 75 miles per hour. The van tried to follow, but Daniel immediately cut back right, getting ahead of both vehicles. The exit came up fast, exit 57, rest area. Daniel blew past it, staying on the highway. In his mirrors, he saw both the van and the pickup take the exit. They'd given up the chase. His CB crackled. Well done, you're clear now. State police are pulling into that rest area right now. They're going to find some very surprised criminals. Daniel was breathing hard, adrenaline flooding his system. Okay, seriously, who are you? Are you FBI, DEA, what? Silence. Then, does it matter? You're safe. Your cargo is safe. That's what counts. I want to thank you properly. I want to know who I'm talking to. A longer silence. When the voice came back, it sounded different, sadder. My name was Michael Brennan. I drove trucks for 36 years, made this same run probably 1,000 times. 2 years ago, I got boxed in by cargo thieves. They forced me off the road, took my truck, took my load, beat me pretty bad in the process. I died 3 days later in the hospital. Daniel's blood turned to ice. That's not funny. No, it's not. It's just the truth. I don't know why I'm still here, still monitoring the CB, still watching these roads. Maybe I can't let go. Maybe I've got unfinished business. But I see things now. I see patterns. I see when bad things are about to happen. And sometimes when I get lucky, I can warn drivers, help them avoid what happened to me. You're saying you're a ghost, talking to me on the CB. I'm saying I'm not alive, but I'm still here. And I'm still looking out for my fellow drivers. Check the news tomorrow, Daniel. You'll see they arrested 4 people at that rest area tonight, caught them with equipment for hijacking trucks. You'll see I was telling you the truth. The radio went dead. Daniel tried calling back repeatedly, cycling through every channel. Nothing. Just static and the distant chatter of other truckers on 19, talking about weather and traffic and fuel prices. Daniel completed his delivery to Portland. The next day, he did check the news. Massachusetts State Police had indeed arrested 4 individuals at a rest area on I-95, charging them with conspiracy to commit armed robbery and possession of equipment used in cargo theft. The article mentioned they'd been targeting pharmaceutical shipments specifically, using staged breakdowns to identify and stop target vehicles. Daniel submitted a full report to his company's security team. He told them about the CB warnings, though he left out the part about the voice claiming to be dead. They commended him for his alertness and defensive driving. The pharmaceutical company's insurance provider sent him a bonus check for protecting the cargo. But Daniel knows the truth. He was saved by someone, something. That shouldn't exist. A driver still running his route even after death, still watching the highway, still protecting his fellow truckers from dangers he couldn't avoid himself. Daniel still runs that route from New Jersey to Maine. He always keeps his CB on now, always monitors Channel 19. And sometimes, late at night on empty stretches of highway, he hears that voice again. Not talking to him specifically, but warning other drivers. Heads up about accidents, weather moving in, police ahead, bad people working a con at the truck stop. Michael Brennan is still out there, still driving invisible highways, still watching over the brotherhood of truckers who share the road. Daniel never hears his voice without saying a quiet thank you to a man who proved that not even death can stop a true professional from completing his mission, getting the cargo through safely, no matter what it costs. Story 5. The passenger who wasn't there. Thomas Bradford had been running teams with his wife Sarah for 14 years, covering long-distance routes that required 2 drivers to maintain legal hours of service. They hauled everything from furniture to electronics, crisscrossing the country in their 2017 Kenworth T680. It was a good life, challenging but rewarding, and they'd built their partnership both personal and professional on trust, communication, and shared responsibility. On January 17, 2022, everything changed. Sarah had been feeling unwell for several weeks, persistent cough, fatigue, difficulty breathing. They'd been to doctors who'd run tests and prescribed antibiotics, but nothing seemed to help. On that cold January morning, at a truck stop in Amarillo, Texas, Sarah collapsed while walking back to their truck from the shower facility. She died before the ambulance arrived. Pulmonary embolism, the doctors said later. A blood clot that had traveled to her lungs. Nothing anyone could have done. Thomas's world shattered. They'd been together for 19 years, married for 16. She was his partner, his best friend, the person who made the endless highways bearable. The company gave him bereavement leave. He flew back to their home in Ohio, organized the funeral, accepted condolences from family and friends who said empty things, I'm healing wounds and her being in a better place. 3 weeks later, Thomas called his dispatcher. He needed to drive. Sitting in their empty house was unbearable. Every room reminded him of Sarah. He needed the road, needed the motion, needed the familiar rhythm of shifting gears and watching mile markers slide past. The dispatcher understood and gave him a solo run. Furniture from North Carolina to Seattle, a straightforward cross-country haul. Thomas picked up the load in High Point, North Carolina on February 10th. It felt wrong, climbing into the truck alone, no one riding in the passenger seat. For 14 years, Sarah had been there. Now just empty space. He adjusted mirrors, checked the load, ran through his pre-trip inspection with mechanical efficiency, and pulled onto Interstate 40 West. The first 2 days were manageable. Thomas drove his legal 11 hours, stopped at familiar truck stops, slept fitfully in the bunk. The loneliness was crushing, but he pushed through it, focusing on the mechanics of driving, the logistics of the route, anything to avoid thinking about the empty passenger seat. On the 3rd day, crossing Oklahoma in the late afternoon, Thomas heard Sarah's voice. "You're drifting right. Watch the lane." Thomas jerked, his hands tightening on the wheel. He had been drifting slightly, had been watching the sunset instead of focusing on the road. He corrected his position, heart hammering. Then realized what had just happened. He'd heard Sarah's voice. Clear as day, her familiar tone, the way she always alerted him when he wasn't paying attention. But Sarah was dead. He'd watched them lower her casket into frozen ground 3 weeks ago. "Grief is messing with your head," Thomas muttered to himself. "That's all. Your mind filled in her voice because you're used to hearing it." An hour later, stopped at a rest area, Thomas was checking his load securement when he heard her again. "The strap on the right side is loose. 3rd one back." Thomas turned around quickly, looking for the source of the voice. Empty parking lot. A few other trucks scattered around, their drivers either sleeping or inside the facilities. No one near his trailer. He climbed up to check the strap Sarah's voice had mentioned. It was loose, working its way free from the cleat. Another 50 miles and it might have come completely undone, putting strain on the other straps, potentially causing a load shift. He tightened it, disturbed and confused. How had he known which strap was loose? He hadn't consciously noticed it during his inspection. Had he subconsciously seen the problem and his mind manufactured Sarah's voice to alert him? That night, parked at a truck stop in New Mexico, Thomas lay in the bunk. The ceiling. The truck creaked and settled around him, familiar sounds that usually brought comfort. Tonight they felt hollow, empty. He missed Sarah with a physical ache that wouldn't subside. "I miss you too," her voice said from the darkness of the cab. Thomas sat up so fast he banged his head on the bunk's ceiling. "Sarah," no response. Just the hum of other trucks idling in the lot, the distant sound of highway traffic. Thomas climbed down from the bunk, turning on the cab lights. Empty. Of course empty. His dead wife was not sitting in the passenger seat, no matter what his grief-addled brain wanted to believe. He tried to sleep but couldn't. At 4:00 a.m. he gave up, did his pre-trip inspection and got back on the highway. Interstate 40 stretched west through the darkness, heading toward Arizona and the California border beyond. Thomas drove mechanically, his mind circling around the impossible question. Was he losing his sanity? "You're not crazy," Sarah's voice said. She was sitting in the passenger seat now. Thomas could see her from the corner of his eye. But when he turned to look directly at her, the seat was empty. "This isn't real," Thomas said aloud. "You're not here. Define here." Sarah's voice held that note of gentle humor she'd always used when Thomas was being overly literal. "I'm not here in the way I used to be, but I'm not entirely gone either. I can't explain it, Tom. I don't understand it myself." Thomas's hands shook on the steering wheel. "If you're real, prove it. Tell me something I don't know. In Flagstaff, don't take your usual route through town. There's construction they haven't posted signs for yet. Take the 89 bypass instead. And when you get to Kingman, call dispatch. They're going to have a load modification for you, picking up additional freight. They haven't called you yet, but they will." Thomas drove in silence, testing his own perceptions. Was he hallucinating, having some kind of breakdown? But Sarah's presence felt real, not physical, not solid but present in a way he couldn't deny. The passenger seat wasn't empty anymore, not quite. There was a sense of occupancy, of someone riding beside him as she always had. In Flagstaff, Thomas took the 89 bypass. His usual route through town was blocked by construction that indeed had not been posted on any highway signs or GPS alerts. His phone rang as he approached Kingman. Dispatch with a load modification, exactly as Sarah had predicted. Additional furniture to pick up at a warehouse just off the highway. "Still here," Thomas whispered that night, parked in Barstow, California, the last major stop before Seattle. "You're really still here?" "I'm here," confirmed. "I don't know for how long, I don't know why, but I'm not ready to leave you alone yet. You need someone watching your back, making sure you don't drift right, making sure you check your straps. You're terrible at taking care of yourself when you're alone." Thomas laughed, surprising himself. It was the first time he'd laughed since she died. "I am pretty terrible at it. So let me help for as long as I can." Thomas completed the run to Seattle. He delivered the furniture, accepted the next load his dispatcher assigned, and kept driving. Sarah's presence remained. Not constant, sometimes he couldn't sense her for hours, but she was there often enough. She'd alert him to hazards he might have missed. She'd remind him to check his fuel level, to call dispatch, to eat something instead of surviving on coffee. She talked to him during long, empty stretches of highway, her voice keeping the loneliness at bay. Other drivers might have thought he was losing his mind. Thomas considered that possibility. He saw a grief counselor at one stop, talked about experiencing his dead wife's presence. The counselor said it was a common part of grief, sensing the continued presence of loved ones. It usually faded with time, she said. The brain's way of adjusting gradually to loss rather than all at once. But Thomas knew better. This wasn't his brain creating comforting illusions. Sarah was there. Not alive, not physical, but present in ways that transcended normal explanation. She proved it repeatedly, alerting him to situations he couldn't have known about, providing information he couldn't have possessed. The months passed. Thomas kept driving, kept working. Sarah's presence gradually faded. The times he could sense her grew less frequent. Her voice became fainter. He knew she was letting go, moving on to wherever the dead go when they finally release their hold on the living world. Their last conversation came on a summer night in Montana, 6 months after her death. Thomas was parked at a rest area under stars so bright they looked fake, like someone had spilled diamonds across black velvet. "I have to go now," Sarah said, her voice barely a whisper. "I can't hold on anymore." "I know," Thomas said, tears running down his face. "I understand. You're going to be okay. You're stronger than you think. I don't want to be strong. I want you back. I know, baby, but you're going to be okay. You're going to keep driving. You're going to meet someone eventually when you're ready. You're going to have a life. That's what I want for you." "I love you," Thomas said to the empty cab, to the presence he could barely sense now. "I love you so much." "I love you too, always, forever. But now I have to go. Be safe. Watch for drift. Check your straps." And then she was gone, truly gone. Her seat returned to being simply empty. No sense of presence, no feeling of occupancy. Thomas sat alone in his truck under the Montana stars and wept for the second time in 6 months, saying goodbye to his wife for the final time. Thomas still drives solo routes across the country. The grief has softened with time, though it never entirely leaves. The passenger seat is empty now and will probably remain that way. He's not looking for another partner. What he had with Sarah, both in life and in that strange grace period after death, was unique, irreplaceable. But sometimes, late at night on empty highways, Thomas swears he feels just a whisper of her presence. A sense that he's not entirely alone, that someone still watches over him from distances he can't travel. And whenever he catches himself drifting right, whenever he remembers to check a strap that seemed fine, whenever he avoids a hazard he somehow knew about seconds before seeing it, he whispers thank you to a passenger who loved him enough to stay, even after death took her body, until she was certain he could make it on his own. Story 6. The Deadline. Kevin Murphy worked for a courier company specializing in time-critical freight, medical equipment, industrial parts needed for emergency repairs, legal documents requiring same-day delivery. The work paid exceptionally well precisely because the deadlines were absolute. Kevin had been doing it for 7 years, building a reputation for reliability that made him the company's go-to driver for impossible runs. On September 5, 2020, Kevin got a call at 2:00 p.m. Emergency medical equipment needed to be transported from Houston to a hospital in Little Rock, Arkansas. A specialized dialysis machine required for a child patient who would die without treatment within the next 18 hours. The machine weighed 350 pounds and required climate-controlled transport. The hospital had tried chartering aircraft, but weather was grounding flights across the region. Ground transport was the only option. Kevin accepted immediately. Houston to Little Rock was 523 miles via Interstate 45 and Interstate 30. Under normal conditions, it was a 9-hour drive. The company needed it there by 11:00 p.m. that night, 9 hours from now. Kevin would have to maintain an average speed of 60 miles per hour with no delays. Tight, but doable. He picked up the machine at 2:47 p.m. from a medical supply warehouse in Houston. It was already secured in a climate-controlled container that fit perfectly in his cargo van. Kevin signed the paperwork, acknowledged the delivery deadline and the critical nature of the cargo, and pulled onto Interstate 45 North at 3:03 p.m. He had 7 hours and 57 minutes to cover 523 miles. The first 2 hours went smoothly. Kevin maintained 70 miles per hour, building a cushion of extra time. Traffic was moderate but flowing. The weather was cloudy but dry. His GPS showed an estimated arrival time of 10:42 p.m., 18 minutes before deadline, everything according to plan. At 5:15 p.m., just past Centerville, Texas, traffic stopped, completely stopped. Kevin crept forward for a few minutes, then came to a standstill. He grabbed his phone, checking traffic apps. Major accident ahead, all lanes blocked, unknown clearance time. His GPS recalculated. New estimated arrival, 1:23 a.m. Kevin's stomach clenched. That was 2.5 hours past deadline. A child would die. He called dispatch, explaining the situation. They called the hospital, begging for flexibility. The hospital was sympathetic but firm. The patient needed treatment by midnight at the absolute latest. After that, even if the machine arrived, it would be too late. Kevin sat in stopped traffic, watching the clock tick away minutes he couldn't spare. 5:30 p.m. 5:45 p.m. 6:00 p.m. The deadline was becoming impossible. Ahead, he could see flashing lights of emergency vehicles. Behind him, traffic backed up as far as he could see. At 6:14 p.m., traffic began moving again, creeping forward at 10 miles per hour. Kevin saw the accident site as he passed. 3 cars and a semi-truck, catastrophic damage, emergency crews still working. He felt terrible for those involved but couldn't help calculating. He'd lost an hour. He now had 4 hours and 46 minutes to cover 360 remaining miles. He needed to average 76 miles per hour. Possible, but only if nothing else went wrong. Kevin pushed the speed limit, running 78 miles per hour whenever traffic allowed. His cargo van wasn't built for sustained high speeds. It shook and rattled, the engine straining. But the equipment in back was climate-controlled and secured. As long as he got there, however rough the ride, the machine would be functional. At 7:30 p.m., rain started, light at first, then heavier. Kevin's speed dropped to 65 miles per hour for safety. Deadline was slipping away again. His GPS now showed 11:17 p.m. estimated arrival, 17 minutes past deadline. He called dispatch again. They'd been in contact with the hospital. The medical team was trying everything to keep the child stable, buying every possible minute. But there were hard limits to human biology. Kevin wasn't just driving equipment anymore. He was literally carrying a child's life in his van, racing against physiology and time. The pressure crushed down on Kevin's shoulders like physical weight. He'd done time-critical runs before, but never one where someone's survival depended so directly on his driving. His hands gripped the steering wheel with painful intensity. His eyes burned from staring at the rain-slicked highway. At 8:47 p.m., just outside Texarkana, his van's check engine light came on. The temperature gauge was creeping toward the red zone. Kevin's heart sank. He couldn't stop. Stopping meant failure, meant death for a child he'd never meet. He turned the heater to maximum, drawing heat away from the engine, and kept driving. The temperature gauge stabilized just below the red line. 9:30 p.m. He was in Arkansas now, 110 miles from Little Rock. 1.5 hours to deadline. Traffic was light. The rain had stopped. If nothing else went wrong, he might make it with 5 or 10 minutes to spare. At 9:52 p.m., a tire blew. The right rear tire shredded with a bang that sounded like a gunshot. Kevin fought the wheel, keeping the van under control, pulling onto the shoulder. He sat there, hands shaking, staring at the clock. 9:53 p.m. The deadline was in 67 minutes. He was still 74 miles away. Kevin had never changed a tire so fast in his life. He had the jack out, the van lifted, the blown tire off in 4 minutes. The spare tire was on and tightened in another 3. He threw the blown tire in the back, collapsed the jack, and was back on the highway at 10:01 p.m. 60 miles to go, 59 minutes until deadline. He pushed the van to its absolute limit. 85 miles per hour on the spare tire, which wasn't rated for sustained speeds above 50. He didn't care if the tire failed, if the engine seized, if the transmission exploded. The only thing that mattered was getting that machine to Little Rock before 11:00 p.m. The cargo van shuddered and groaned, every component stressed beyond design limits. Kevin's GPS counted down the miles. 40 miles, 30 miles, 20. Rock City lights appeared on the horizon like a constellation of hope. The hospital was on the north side of the city. Kevin's GPS tried to route him through downtown. He overrode it, taking a longer route that avoided traffic signals. His van screamed down Interstate 430, taking the exit at 50 miles per hour, running through amber lights at intersections. He wasn't being safe anymore. He was gambling everything on making the deadline. At 10:54 p.m., Kevin pulled into the hospital emergency entrance. Medical staff were waiting, having been alerted by dispatch. He jumped out, opened the back doors. Staff swarmed the van, removing the climate-controlled container. A doctor checked the equipment's status, fully functional, proper temperature maintained throughout transport. Kevin collapsed against his van, legs shaking, adrenaline draining away. He checked his phone. 10:56 p.m., 4 minutes to spare. A nurse came out 10 minutes later. The patient is receiving treatment now. You made it in time. Thank you. Kevin nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. The nurse went back inside. Kevin sat on the curb, head in his hands, experiencing the most profound relief of his life mixed with delayed terror about everything that had gone wrong and everything that could have gone worse. His van was finished. The engine seized up when he tried to restart it an hour later. The spare tire was worn bald from running at high speed. Multiple warning lights illuminated the dashboard. The company had to send a tow truck from Houston to retrieve it. Kevin rode back to Houston in a taxi at 2:00 a.m., exhausted beyond words. The company covered all repair costs and gave Kevin a bonus that covered 3 months of his normal salary. But money wasn't why Kevin had done it. He'd done it because a child's life depended on him, and he'd be damned if he was going to let a human being die because of traffic or weather or mechanical problems or anything else that could be overcome through sheer determination. Kevin still does time-critical runs, though never one quite as desperate as that September night. He's transported organs for transplant, emergency blood supplies, experimental medications. Every run is important. Every deadline matters to someone. But that run to Little Rock changed something fundamental in how Kevin views his work. It's not just cargo. It's never just cargo. Behind every box, every crate, every container, there's a human story. Someone waiting for medicine that will save their life. Someone needing parts to repair equipment that is running and families employed. Someone depending on documents that will prove their innocence or secure their freedom. Kevin drives with that awareness now. The highway isn't just asphalt and mile markers. It's the connective tissue of civilization, and drivers like him are the blood cells carrying vital supplies through the system. Sometimes those supplies are the difference between life and death. Sometimes the deadline isn't just a number in a contract. Sometimes a driver's skill, determination, and willingness to push beyond safe limits can save a life they'll never see, touch a family they'll never meet, change the world in ways that will never make headlines but matter absolutely to the people affected. That child in Little Rock lived. Kevin found out later through the company's follow-up. The dialysis worked. The child recovered. Years of life stretched ahead, all because a driver refused to give up, refused to accept that the deadline was impossible, refused to let mechanics or weather or accidents stop him from delivering what he promised to deliver. Kevin carries that knowledge with him on every run now. Somewhere, someone is depending on him, and he will not let them down, no matter what the highway throws at him, no matter how impossible the deadline seems, because that's what professionals do. That's what drivers do. They deliver, always. Story 7, The Overpass Watchers. Angela Morrison ran overnight routes through the Midwest, hauling agricultural equipment and bulk farm supplies from manufacturing centers to rural distribution points. She'd been doing it for 15 years, comfortable with the solitude, the darkness, and the empty highways that connected America's small towns. Her 2016 International Pro Star was reliable and familiar, and Angela knew the back roads of Iowa, Nebraska, and Kansas better than most people knew their own neighborhoods. On April 23, 2021, Angela was hauling a load of irrigation equipment from Des Moines, Iowa, to a farm supply depot outside Hays, Kansas. She'd taken Route 36 West, a 2-lane highway that cut through the heart of rural America, small towns, endless fields, occasional clusters of trees marking farmsteads. It was 2:30 a.m., the dead middle of night, and Angela hadn't seen another vehicle in over an hour. The highway rolled through gentle hills, straight stretches alternating with lazy curves. Angela had driven this route hundreds of times. She knew every town, every crossing, every overpass. There weren't many, maybe a dozen overpasses total on this section of highway, most of them carrying county roads over Route 36. At 2:47 a.m., Angela approached one of these overpasses. Her headlights illuminated the concrete structure spanning the highway, and that's when she saw the figure standing on it. A person standing at the edge of the overpass, looking down at the highway, standing perfectly still, silhouetted against the night sky. Angela's immediate thought was suicide prevention. Someone contemplating jumping. She grabbed her CB radio, trying to raise anyone who might be monitoring. No response. She fumbled for her cell phone to call 911, but there was no signal out here. Rural Kansas had spotty cell coverage at best. She drove under the overpass, watching in her mirrors. The figure didn't move, didn't jump, just stood there watching her truck pass beneath. Once she was half a mile past, Angela checked her phone again. Still no signal. She'd call as soon as she had coverage, report the person on the overpass, let authorities handle it. 3 miles later, another overpass appeared in her headlights. Another figure stood on it. Same position, same posture, standing at the edge looking down at the highway. Angela felt a chill run through her. Two people contemplating suicide in one night on the same stretch of highway. That seemed unlikely. She drove under the second overpass. The figure didn't move. In her mirrors, she could see it still standing there, watching her taillights disappear into the night. 5 miles later, a third overpass. A third figure. This one was joined by a second figure, both standing at the edge, both looking down at the highway. Angela's hands tightened on the steering wheel. This wasn't right. This wasn't normal behavior. 3 separate overpasses, multiple people standing in the middle of the night watching the highway. Angela tried her CB again, sweeping through channels, hoping to raise another truck or anyone. Static answered her, broken by occasional bursts of what sounded like voices but too distorted to understand. She checked her phone obsessively, watching for signal bars that didn't appear. The fourth overpass had 5 figures. They stood in a line, evenly spaced across the overpass, all facing the highway. As Angela's truck approached, they didn't move, just stood there, watching. She could see them clearly in her headlights now. People of various heights and builds, wearing ordinary clothes, nothing obviously threatening. But something about their absolute stillness, their silent watching, sent fear crawling up Angela's spine. She drove faster, truck to 70 miles per hour on the empty highway. The overpasses were spaced 3 to 5 miles apart. There were 8 more between her current position and the Kansas state line, where Route 36 intersected with a larger highway. 8 more opportunities for those silent watchers to appear. The 5th overpass held a dozen figures. They lined both sides of the overpass, standing shoulder to shoulder, all looking down. Angela's breathing came fast and shallow. This was wrong on every level. What were they doing? What did they want? Were they tracking her specifically, or did they watch every vehicle that passed? The highway had been empty. Angela hadn't seen another car in over an hour. Maybe she was the only target. Angela floored the accelerator, her truck's engine roaring. She hit 75 miles per hour, faster than was safe on the dark 2-lane highway, but terror had taken over rational thought. She needed to get past these overpasses, needed to reach the state line and the larger highway where there would be other traffic, witnesses, normalcy. The 6th overpass was covered with figures. 20, maybe 30 people packed onto the structure, all watching her approach. Angela screamed, unable to contain the sound. She blasted under the overpass, doing 78 miles per hour, her trailer swaying slightly from the speed. Her phone rang. Angela nearly dropped it in shock. She grabbed it, answering while trying to keep her truck on the road. Hello, I need help, breathing. Someone was breathing on the other end of the line, slow and steady. Then a voice, distorted and strange. We're watching you, Angela. We know where you're going. We'll be waiting. The call ended. Angela stared at her phone. The screen showed the call had lasted 12 seconds, but it showed no number, just unknown caller. And her signal bars still showed 0. No signal. The call shouldn't have been possible. The 7th overpass appeared ahead. Angela could see figures clustered on it, but she refused to count them. She kept her eyes on the road, trying to focus on driving, on staying in her lane, on not letting terror send her careening off the highway. As she passed under the overpass, she heard sounds. Impacts. Things hitting her trailer. Not hard enough to cause damage, but definite impacts, a rapid series of thumps. She checked her mirrors. Objects were falling from the overpass, thrown by the watchers. Not rocks, something lighter. As she drove, more impacts hit her trailer, her cab, her windshield, paper. They were throwing paper at her truck. Sheets of paper that fluttered in her slipstream, some sticking to her mirrors, her windshield wipers. Angela could see writing on them, but couldn't make out the words at this. The 8th overpass held more figures than Angela could count. They packed the structure like concert goers at a railing, dozens of people standing shoulder to shoulder, all watching her approach. As Angela's truck drew near, they raised their arms in unison, pointing at her. Every single one of them, arms extended, fingers pointing directly at her truck. Angela sobbed, fear overriding everything else. She wanted to stop, to turn around, to find a different route. But turning around meant going back past all those overpasses again, past all those watchers. Forward was the only option. Forward to the state line, to the intersection with Highway 283 where civilization and safety waited. The ninth overpass appeared, figures covering it. The 10th. Angela drove in a blur of terror, her truck exceeding 80 miles per hour now, far beyond safe speeds. The trailer fishtailed slightly on curves, but Angela didn't care. She had to get through this, had to escape whatever was happening. The 11th overpass came and went. Two more, just two more before the state line. The 12th overpass was empty, no figures, no watchers, just a concrete structure spanning the highway, dark and ordinary. Angela almost didn't believe it. She checked her mirrors obsessively as she passed underneath. Nothing. No one. The overpass was genuinely empty. One more. The 13th and final overpass before the state line. Angela's fuel gauge caught her eye. She'd burned through more fuel than expected with the high speeds. She'd need to stop soon. But first, get past this last overpass. It appeared in her headlights. Hundreds of figures covered it. They lined the railings, clustered in groups, filled every available space. An impossible number of people packed onto a structure that shouldn't hold that many bodies. As Angela's truck approached, they moved as one, turning to face her direction of travel, following her passage beneath the overpass with synchronized motion that suggested a single mind controlling multiple bodies. Angela screamed again, laying on her horn, the sound blaring into the night. She shot under the overpass doing 85 miles per hour, and then she was through, she was past it, the state line appearing ahead, the intersection with Highway 283 lit by sodium vapor lights that seemed impossibly bright after the darkness. She took the turn too fast, her trailer swinging wide, tires squealing. But she made it, getting onto Highway 283 heading south toward Hayes. Traffic appeared, a few cars, another semi-truck heading north. Normal vehicles driven by normal people going about normal business. Angela pulled into the first truck stop she found, parking under the brightest lights in the lot. She sat in her cab, shaking violently, unable to make herself get out. Other truckers walked past, heading into the building or back to their trucks. Normal people, real people, not silent watchers standing on overpasses in the dead of night. After 20 minutes, she finally climbed down from her cab. She walked around her truck, checking for damage. The trailer was intact, no dents or scratches, but papers were stuck to various surfaces, caught by mirrors and wipers and door handles. Angela pulled one free. It was a missing person poster. A young woman's photo, her name, the date she disappeared. Angela pulled another paper loose. Another missing person poster. Different person, different date. She collected all the papers she could find, 14 in total. 14 missing person posters, all from the same region of Kansas and Nebraska, all disappearances within the past 7 years. Angela went inside the truck stop and called the state police from a payphone. She reported what she'd experienced, knowing how insane it sounded. The officer was patient, taking her report seriously. He said they'd send a unit to check the overpasses she'd mentioned. He took her information, thanked her for calling. Angela never heard back from police about what they found, if anything. She completed her delivery to Hayes, but she refused to take Route 36 back. She drove south to Interstate 70, adding 4 hours to her return trip, not caring about the extra time or fuel cost. Later, Angela researched the missing persons whose posters had been thrown at her truck. All 14 had disappeared along or near Route 36. Several were last seen near overpasses. The cases remained unsolved. No bodies ever found. No suspects ever identified. Angela still drives trucks through the Midwest, but she's modified her routes to avoid Route 36 west of Route 281. She'll drive hundreds of miles out of her way to avoid that stretch of highway. Other drivers have told her stories about the overpass watchers, legends that circulate among truckers who run the rural routes. Some say the watchers are ghosts of the missing, trapped between life and death. Some say there's something else, something that uses human form but isn't human. Some say they're warnings trying to alert drivers to danger ahead. Angela doesn't know what they are and doesn't want to know. She knows they're real. She saw them, heard their impossible phone, received their messages written on missing person posters. She knows that some mysteries are better left uninvestigated, some roads are better left untraveled, and some watchers are watching for reasons that human minds aren't meant to understand. Late at night, when Angela drives through rural areas and approaches an overpass, she holds her breath until she's passed underneath, always checking her mirrors, always counting the figures if any appear. Because she knows they're still out there, still watching, still waiting on their concrete perches for travelers who happen to pass through at the wrong time in the wrong place, when the boundaries between the world we know and the worlds we don't grow thin enough to cross. Story 8. The Cargo THAT-MOVED. Robert Sullivan specialized in hauling unusual cargo, oversized equipment, delicate machinery, temperature-sensitive materials that required careful handling. His reputation for professionalism and attention to detail had earned him contracts with research facilities, universities, and specialized manufacturers. In 22 years of driving, Robert had hauled everything from particle accelerator components to frozen biological samples to artwork worth millions. Nothing fazed him. On June 12, 2019, Robert received an unusual request. A research facility outside Albany, New York, needed something transported to a secure storage facility in Columbus, Ohio. The cargo was described only as biological research materials, temperature-sensitive, handled with extreme care. The paperwork was minimal, just a load number, pickup and delivery addresses, and temperature specifications. Maintained between 34 and 38 degrees Fahrenheit, absolutely no deviation. Robert picked up the cargo at 8:00 p.m. The research facility was located on a rural property, surrounded by high fences and security gates. Guards checked his credentials 3 times before allowing him to the loading dock. The cargo was already containerized, a stainless steel unit about 6 feet long, 4 feet wide, and 4 feet tall, with integrated refrigeration systems. It weighed exactly 890 pounds according to the scale. 3 technicians supervised the loading, providing Robert with detailed instructions about the container's monitoring systems. It had internal temperature sensors that transmitted data to a display unit they installed on Robert's dashboard. If the temperature deviated outside the acceptable range, alarms would sound. The container also had backup power systems that would maintain refrigeration for up to 12 hours if external power failed. "This cargo is extremely valuable," one technician told Robert. "More valuable than you can imagine. Get it to Columbus safely, and there's a substantial bonus in this for you." Robert secured the container in his climate-controlled trailer, double-checking all straps and tie-downs. The container's monitoring display showed 36 degrees Fahrenheit, right in the middle of the acceptable range. Everything looked good. Robert signed the paperwork and pulled out at 9:15 p.m. Columbus was 530 miles away, a 9-hour drive. He planned to arrive around 6:30 a.m. The first 2 hours were routine. Robert took Interstate 90 west through New York, monitoring his speed and fuel consumption. The container's temperature display remained stable at 36 degrees. Traffic was light. Weather was clear. Everything according to plan. At 11:30 p.m., somewhere between Syracuse and Rochester, Robert heard a sound from his trailer. A thump like something shifting position. He checked his mirrors. The trailer looked stable, no visible movement, but the container weighed 890 pounds. It shouldn't move no matter how rough the road, not with the securement he'd used. 10 minutes later, another thump. Louder this time, more forceful. Robert's eyes flicked to the container's temperature display. Still 36 degrees. Temperature was fine, but something was moving back there. Robert pulled off at the next rest area and walked back to his trailer, flashlight in hand. He opened the rear doors. The container sat exactly where he'd secured it, straps tight, no visible movement. But standing there in the darkness, Robert could hear something. A faint scratching sound from inside the container. Not mechanical, it didn't sound like refrigeration equipment or cooling fans. It sounded organic, like fingernails on metal. Robert's skin crawled. Biological research materials, they'd said. What kind of biological materials? He'd assumed tissue samples, maybe organs for transplant research, frozen biological specimens. But those wouldn't make sounds. Those wouldn't move. He closed the trailer doors and got back in his cab. Probably his imagination, he told himself. The refrigeration system made sounds. Air handling equipment created noise that could sound like scratching. He was tired, it was late. His mind was playing tricks. At 12:47 a.m., something hit the inside hard enough to rock the entire truck. Robert felt the impact through his seat. The trailer swayed slightly, settling back. Robert's heart hammered. That was no refrigeration system. That was something large and strong hitting the trailer wall. The temperature display still showed 36 degrees. Whatever was happening, the refrigeration was working fine. But the cargo was definitely not stable. Robert grabbed his phone to call the research facility to ask what exactly he was hauling. No answer. He tried 3 times, straight to voicemail. He tried calling the delivery facility in Columbus. No answer there either. It was almost 1:00 a.m. and apparently no one was on duty overnight. Another impact, harder this time. The trailer rocked. Robert could hear something now even through the insulated walls of his cab and trailer. A sound like scraping metal, like something trying to tear through the container from the inside. Robert pulled over on the shoulder, hazard lights flashing. He sat there, gripping the steering wheel, trying to decide what to do. Opening the trailer again seemed like a terrible idea. Continuing to drive with cargo that was clearly compromised seemed equally bad. But sitting on the shoulder of Interstate 90 in the middle of the night wasn't safe either. His CB radio crackled to life. Unit on 90 westbound, the Volvo with the sealed trailer. You need to keep moving. Robert grabbed the mic. Who is this? How do you know what I'm hauling? We're monitoring your cargo. The container's systems transmit data back to us. You've stopped. That's not acceptable. You need to keep moving. Get to Columbus as quickly as possible. Something's wrong with the cargo, Robert said. It's moving. Something inside is trying to get out. A pause, then. We're aware. The temperature fluctuations have triggered a response. As long as the refrigeration systems maintain proper temperature, the container will hold, but you need to get to Columbus. The receiving facility has proper containment. Your trailer does not. What the hell am I hauling? Robert demanded. You're hauling something that needs to stay cold and contained. That's all you need to know. Drive now. The radio went dead. Robert tried calling back. No response. He checked the temperature display, still 36 degrees. The container was maintaining temperature. Whatever was inside was reacting to something, but the refrigeration was working. Robert put his truck in gear and pulled back onto the highway. Another impact hit the trailer. Then another. Something was thrashing inside the container, hitting the walls with enough force to rock an 80,000-pound vehicle. The sounds grew louder. Robert could hear them clearly now, even over his engine noise. Metal on metal, a horrible scraping that set his teeth on edge. Whatever was in that container was trying desperately to get out. Robert pushed his speed to 75 miles per hour, faster than was safe but driven by the urgent need to get this cargo delivered and out of his trailer. The impacts continued, coming every few minutes, sometimes accompanied by sounds that Robert's mind insisted couldn't be right. Sounds like breathing, like something alive and large moving around. At 2:30 a.m., passing through Erie, Pennsylvania, The temperature display spiked to 39 degrees. An alarm sounded shrill and urgent. Robert's blood ran cold. The temperature had exceeded the acceptable range. Whatever this triggered, it wouldn't be good. The impacts inside the trailer intensified. Something hit the trailer wall hard enough to create a visible dent from the inside. Robert could see it bulging slightly in his side mirror. The scratching sounds became a shriek of tortured metal. Something was tearing through the container. Robert's phone rang. He answered, nearly dropping it in his shaking hands. "The temperature spiked. Your container is failing. We see it." The voice was tense now, the professional calm shattered. "The backup systems are kicking in. Temperature should stabilize. You're 90 miles from Columbus. Drive faster. Something's trying to get out. We know it won't succeed. The container is reinforced steel designed for this, but you need to get it to Columbus now. Drive faster." Robert floored the accelerator. His truck reached 82 miles per hour, the engine screaming. The trailer swayed dangerously on curves, but Robert didn't slow down. He passed other vehicles like they were standing still, his hazard lights flashing, horn blaring when anyone got in his way. The temperature display showed 37 degrees, dropping back into the safe range. The backup systems had kicked in, but the damage was done. Whatever had been dormant inside that container was fully active now. The impacts came constantly, the trailer rocking and shaking as something threw itself against the walls. At 4:15 a.m., Robert crossed into Ohio, 50 miles to Columbus. The sky was beginning to lighten in the east, false dawn bringing the promise of sunrise. Robert had never wanted daylight so badly in his life. The scratching sounds changed. Now they seemed to be focused on one spot on the container's door or seal. Something was working methodically to open it, no longer thrashing randomly but applying focused effort to escape. Robert's CB crackled. "Exit 110B, take it to the service road. We have personnel waiting. Do not stop for anything. Drive directly to the gate. They'll take the cargo from there." Exit 110B appeared. Robert took it at 60 miles per hour, his trailer swinging wide, tires screaming. The service road led to an industrial area. Robert could see a facility ahead, surrounded by high fences topped with razor wire. Floodlights illuminated a gate where multiple vehicles waited, trucks, vans, people in what looked like hazmat suits. Robert's trailer doors bulged outward. Whatever was inside had nearly broken through. Metal shrieked. The container was failing. Robert drove through the open gate and slammed on his brakes, stopping in a marked area. People in hazmat suits swarmed his trailer immediately. They had equipment Robert didn't recognize, tools and sensors and what looked like weapons. They opened his trailer doors, revealing the container. Its door hung partially open, torn from the inside. Something dark and wet was visible in the gap. "Get out of the truck and walk to the building," someone told Robert. "Don't look back, don't ask questions. Walk away." Robert climbed down from his cab on shaking legs. He walked toward a nearby building, following the directions of people who guided him away from his truck. Behind him, he could hear sounds. The hiss of gas, the whine of equipment, voices shouting instructions. He didn't look back, though every instinct screamed to see what he'd been hauling. Inside the building, they debriefed him. Standard questions. Had he opened the container? Had he noticed anything unusual? Had he maintained proper temperature? Robert answered mechanically, still in shock. They paid him in cash, his delivery fee plus a bonus that totaled more than he usually made in 3 months. They made him sign a non-disclosure agreement with legal language that promised severe consequences if he discussed what had happened. Then they sent him on his way. His truck and trailer were cleaned and returned to him 6 hours later. No damage visible. Whatever dents and tears he'd seen were repaired completely. The container was gone. No one would tell him anything about what he'd hauled or what had happened after he'd walked away. Robert still drives specialized cargo, but he's turned down 3 subsequent requests from that research facility in Albany. He won't haul for them again, no matter how much they pay. Some cargo comes with prices beyond money. prices measured in knowledge you can't unknow, sounds you can't unhear, nightmares that persist long after the delivery is complete. Late at night, when Rob's refrigerated cargo, he listens for sounds from his trailer. Scratching, impact, movement. So far, every load has been normal, inanimate, exactly what the paperwork claimed. But Robert knows the truth now. Sometimes biological research materials aren't frozen samples or tissue specimens. Sometimes they're things that were meant to stay cold and contained. Things that wake up and try to escape when temperature control fails. Things that remind us there are corners of science and discovery that should perhaps remain unexplored. Story 9. The Exit That Appears. Patricia Hernandez ran dedicated routes for an automotive supply company, hauling car parts from manufacturing centers in Michigan to assembly plants scattered across the eastern United States. She'd been driving for 19 years, enough time to know the interstate system like the back of her hand. Her 2020 Freightliner Cascadia was her office and her sanctuary, equipped with every comfort and technology feature she could afford. On December 3, 2021, Patricia was running a load of engine components from Detroit to Charlotte, North Carolina, taking Interstate 75 south through Ohio and Kentucky, then Interstate 40 east through Tennessee. It was a route she'd driven dozens of times, straightforward and familiar. She left Detroit at 7:00 p.m., planning to drive through the night and arrive by midday. The weather was cold but clear, perfect driving conditions. Patricia made good time through Ohio, stopping briefly at a rest area south of Cincinnati to use the bathroom and grab coffee. Back on the highway by 11:30 p.m., she crossed into Kentucky, heading toward Lexington. At 1:15 a.m., somewhere between Georgetown and Lexington on Interstate 75, Patricia saw an exit she'd never noticed before. Exit 119A, the sign read with an arrow pointing right. No destination listed, no indication of what the exit served, just the number and the arrow. Patricia frowned. She'd driven this stretch of highway countless times. She knew the exits: 115, 118, 120, 125. There was no exit 119A. The numbers jumped from 118 to 120. She was certain of it. But there it was in her headlights, the green sign clearly displaying exit 119A, the off-ramp curving away to the right into darkness. Patricia drove past, shaking her head. Maybe she'd been wrong about the exit numbers. Memory wasn't perfect. Perhaps there had always been a 119A and she'd simply never paid attention. 20 minutes later, she saw the sign again. Exit 119A, same design, same placement, same ramp curving off to the right into darkness. Patricia's hands tightened on the steering wheel. This wasn't right. She'd just passed this exit. She couldn't be seeing it again unless what? She'd driven in a circle somehow. That was impossible. Interstate 75 ran straight south through this section. She checked her GPS. It showed her position as steadily progressing south on I-75, approaching Lexington. No indication of anything wrong, no loop in the highway. But there was the exit again, impossible and real. Patricia grabbed her phone, using voice commands to take a picture as she drove past. The photo captured the exit sign clearly. Exit 119A, standard green highway sign, regulation reflective lettering. Evidence that she wasn't hallucinating. 10 miles later, exit 119A appeared for the third time. Patricia felt fear creeping into her chest. This wasn't memory failure or inattention. The same exit was appearing repeatedly, or she was somehow driving the same section of highway over and over despite her GPS insisting she was making forward progress. She tried her CB radio. This is Hernandez Transport, southbound on 75 in Kentucky. Anyone else seeing weird exit signs? Exit 119A specifically. Come back. Static answered her. She swept through channels, more static. No other truckers, no voices, nothing but empty air. The fourth appearance of exit 119A came 5 miles later. This time, Patricia noticed something else. A vehicle was taking the exit, a dark sedan, taillights disappearing down the ramp into darkness. At least she wasn't completely alone on this stretch of highway. But over the next hour, Patricia didn't see that sedan or any other vehicle. The highway was empty in both directions, just her truck and the endless pavement and the exit that kept appearing. 5 times, 6, 7, each time identical, each time impossible. On the 8th appearance, Patricia made a decision. If the exit kept appearing, maybe she was supposed to take it. Maybe that was the only way to break this loop, to move forward instead of endlessly repeating the same stretch of highway. It was insane logic, but the situation had stopped making rational sense hours ago. She activated her turn signal and took exit 119A, the off-curved right, leading away from the interstate. No lights illuminated the ramp, just Patricia's headlights cutting through darkness. The ramp descended, curving more tightly than normal exit geometry, spiraling down and down in a way that didn't match the relatively flat Kentucky terrain. Patricia's stomach tightened with fear, but she was committed now. The ramp had no shoulder, no way to turn around. She had to follow it wherever it led. After what felt like a mile of descending spirals, the ramp straightened out, leading to a 4-way intersection lit by a single streetlight. Patricia stopped at the intersection, her truck idling, and looked around. 4 roads met here, all identical, 2-lane asphalt stretching away into darkness. No signs, no indication which direction led where. No buildings, no landmarks, nothing but flat, empty land extending in all directions. The streetlight cast a pale circle of illumination that seemed to push back the darkness rather than illuminate anything beyond the intersection. Patricia pulled out her phone. No signal. Her GPS showed nothing. The screen was blank except for a blue dot representing her truck, floating in white empty space with no roads, no terrain, no landmarks. She might as well have been nowhere. A vehicle approached from one of the other roads, the dark sedan she'd seen taking the exit earlier. It pulled up to the intersection opposite Patricia, stopped, engine idling. Patricia could see someone in the driver's seat, but the distance and darkness made details impossible to discern. The sedan's headlights flashed once. Patricia didn't know how to respond. She flashed her own lights. The sedan turned right and drove away, disappearing into the darkness down one of the 4 roads. Patricia sat at the intersection, trying to decide what to do. 4 choices. No information about where any road led. She could turn around, try to find the on-ramp back to the interstate, but the spiraling descent had been so long and disorienting, she wasn't sure she could navigate back. Forward seemed like the only real option. She chose the road the sedan had taken, figuring following someone else was better than choosing randomly. Her truck rumbled forward, leaving the intersection and its lonely streetlight behind. The road stretched straight through darkness. Patricia's headlights revealed nothing but pavement and the occasional reflective marker. No trees, no buildings, no signs. Just endless flat nothing on both sides. She drove for what felt like 20 minutes, though when she checked her clock only 5 minutes had elapsed. Then the road began to curve, gently at first, then more tightly. It spiraled upward, rising in a helical pattern that was the exact reverse of the exit ramp she descended. Patricia's relief was so profound it almost hurt. She was going back to the interstate, back to the normal world. The spiral ramp emerged onto a highway. Patricia accelerated, getting up to speed, checking her GPS. It showed her on Interstate 75 southbound, approaching Lexington, as if nothing had happened. As if she'd never taken exit 119A, never descended into that impossible nowhere place, never sat at an intersection that couldn't exist. But her clock showed 3:47 a.m. She left the interstate at 2:50. An hour and a half had passed, though it had felt like maybe 30 minutes. That missing time had gone somewhere, spent in a place that wasn't quite Kentucky, wasn't quite anywhere, a pocket of geography that existed adjacent to the normal world. Patricia drove straight through to Charlotte, no more stops, no more strange exits. She delivered her load and immediately called her dispatcher to request different routes. She didn't want to run I-75 through Kentucky anymore. Any alternate route would be fine, even if it added time and miles. The dispatcher asked why. Patricia said she'd had a weird experience, nothing dangerous, but she just preferred to avoid that section of highway. The dispatcher agreed without argument. Drivers developed preferences and superstitions about routes. It was common enough that no one questioned it. Patricia researched exit 119A later, searching online for any information. She found scattered references in trucker forums and road tripper blogs. Other people had seen it. Some had taken it. Their stories varied. Some described the same spiraling descent to a lonely intersection. Others described the exit leading to abandoned towns or empty rest stops or long straight roads that eventually looped back to the highway. Everyone agreed on one thing. Exit 119A appeared randomly, wasn't present all the time, and taking it led to places that shouldn't exist. One post mentioned a theory. Exit 119A was a road between places, a service route for something that lived adjacent to our reality, a way station for travelers moving through dimensions humans couldn't normally perceive. The exit appeared when the boundary thinned, when the impossible became briefly accessible. Patricia didn't know if she believed in dimensional boundaries or parallel realities. She'd driven somewhere that wasn't on any map, spent time that left no record, and encountered roads that didn't follow the normal rules of geography. Whether that made it another dimension or just a very strange piece of Kentucky didn't really matter. What mattered was that she'd found her way back. Patricia still drives trucks through the eastern United States. She runs I-75 through Ohio and Tennessee, but she takes alternate routes through Kentucky now, even though it adds an hour to her schedule. She's not afraid of exit 119A exactly. She made it through safely, after all. But some destinations don't need to be visited twice. Some exits lead to places that make you question what's real and what's possible. And sometimes the best response to impossible questions is to simply avoid asking them. Late at night, when Patricia drives unfamiliar routes, she watches the exit signs carefully. She knows that the highway system contains more than just roads between cities. There are exits that lead elsewhere, to the spaces between spaces, the roads that connect the normal world to whatever lies beyond it. And as long as drivers keep traveling through the night, some of them will stumble onto these impossible exits and have to choose whether to take them or drive past. Patricia made her choice and lived to tell about it. That's all any driver can hope for when confronting the mysteries that wait just off the highway, marked by signs that shouldn't exist, leading to places that have no names. Story 10. The Final Run. Victor Castellano had been driving trucks for 43 years, longer than some of his fellow drivers had been alive. He'd started in the 70s, back when trucks had manual transmissions and no air conditioning, when CB radios were cutting-edge technology and GPS wasn't even science fiction yet. He'd seen the industry change completely, had adapted to every new regulation and technology, had survived economic downturns and the rise of automation. Now, at 68 years old, Victor was approaching retirement. His company had planned a celebration, scheduled for 2 weeks from now, marking the end of an era. On October 30th, 2022, Victor was running what should have been a routine load, household goods from a warehouse in Nashville to a distribution center in St. Louis, Interstate 24 West to Interstate 57 North, a route he'd driven hundreds of times over 4 decades. It was a Wednesday night, traffic was light, and the weather was clear. An easy final approach to Victor left Nashville at 9:00 p.m., his 2015 Peterbilt 389 humming smoothly. The truck had been with him for 7 years, the last in a long line of trucks he'd driven during his career. He'd probably logged well over 3 million miles over the decades, maybe closer to 4. Every mile was a story, every highway held memories. Around midnight, crossing from Tennessee into Kentucky, Victor felt strange. Not ill exactly, but different. A lightness in his chest, a sense of displacement, as if he were watching himself drive from a slight distance. He checked his mirrors, his gauges, everything was normal, but the feeling persisted. His CB radio crackled. "Victor Castellano, old-timer running the Peterbilt, you copy?" Victor grabbed the mic. "Yeah, I copy. Who's this?" "Someone who's been waiting for you. Someone who wants to talk about roads and driving and endings." "I don't know you," Victor said. "How do you know my name?" "I know a lot of names. I know every driver who's running tonight. But I'm especially interested in you, Victor. 43 years, that's a long career. A lot of miles, a lot of deliveries. You've been faithful to the road, and the road has been good to you." Victor felt uneasy. "What do you want?" "Just to talk, and to give you a choice. Keep driving north to St. Louis, make your delivery. Retire in 2 weeks. Live out your days with your wife, your grandchildren, your memories." "That's one road." "What's the other road?" Victor asked, though part of him didn't want to know. "Exit 25 coming up in about 15 miles. Take it. It leads somewhere different, somewhere you've never been despite all your miles, despite all your years. A place drivers only see once at the end of their runs." "I'm making my delivery to St. Louis," Victor said firmly. "I've got cargo, I've got a schedule, I've got people depending on me." "You do," the voice agreed. "And you could complete that delivery. You could have your retirement party. You could live another 10, maybe 15 years if you're lucky. But the road has another option for you, Victor. The road is offering you something different, something final." "You're talking about dying," Victor said, the words feeling strange in his mouth. "You're saying that exit leads to death. I'm saying it leads to an ending. Whether that's death or something else, I can't tell you. I'm just the voice that offers the choice. The decision is yours." Victor drove in silence, processing this impossible conversation. His rational mind said this was nonsense, stress, fatigue, maybe a small stroke affecting his thinking. But his instincts, honed over 43 years of reading roads and weather and danger, told him this was real. Something was offering him a choice about his own mortality. "Why would I choose to?" Victor asked. "I've got a good life. I love my wife. My grandkids are growing up. I want to see them graduate, get married, have lives." "All true," the voice said. "And you can have that if you drive past exit 25. No judgment, no consequences. Live your life, but the road thinks you might be curious. 43 years, you've driven almost every route, seen almost every sight. Don't you wonder what lies past the final exit? Don't you wonder where the last highway leads?" Exit 25 appeared ahead, marked by standard highway signs. Nothing unusual, nothing dramatic. Just another exit like thousands Victor had seen over the decades. He could drive past, continue to St. Louis, deliver his cargo, have his retirement party, grow old with his wife. But the voice was right about one thing: Victor was curious. After 43 years of roads, he'd seen most of what there was to see in the normal world. The American highway system held few mysteries for him anymore. But the road beyond, the highway past the final exit, that was unexplored territory. Victor thought about his wife, Maria. They'd been married for 46 years. She knew him better than anyone. She'd always said Victor was married to the road first to her second. She'd said it with humor, but there was truth in it. The highway had always called to him, always pulled him back no matter how many times he'd considered quitting, taking a desk job, settling down. "If I take that exit," Victor said slowly, "what happens to my truck, my cargo?" "The truck makes it to St. Louis," the voice said. "Cargo delivered safely. No investigation, no questions. From the outside world's perspective, you drove to St. Louis, made your delivery, and died peacefully that night from a heart attack. Quick, painless, no suffering. Your wife gets your pension, your life insurance, everything taken care of. And in reality, In reality, you take exit 25 and see where it leads. You drive the final highway. You see what lies beyond the last mile marker. And then I can't tell you. I'm not permitted to speak about destinations, only about choices. Exit 25 was 5 miles ahead now. 4, 3. Victor's hands were steady on the wheel. After 43 years, his hands were always steady. He'd driven through blizzards and hurricanes, across mountains and deserts, through situations that would have terrified rookie drivers. His hands stayed steady through everything. 2 miles to exit 25. Victor thought about his retirement party. The cake, the speeches, the gold watch or plaque or whatever corporate HR had arranged. The handshakes from people he'd barely worked with, the forced nostalgia about most of them couldn't imagine. Was that how he wanted this to end? With cake and speeches. 1 mile to exit 25. Victor thought about his wife, about telling her goodbye without words, without a final conversation. That wasn't fair to her. She deserved better than a husband who chose mystery over marriage, who picked one last adventure over a decade of companionship. But Victor also thought about what he'd told her so many times over the years. The road is my life, Maria. When I'm not driving, I'm not quite alive. She understood, even when it hurt her. She understood that Victor needed the highway the way other men needed air. Exit 25 was here. The off-ramp appeared on Victor's right. His turn signal activated automatically muscle memory from 43 years of taking exits. His hands turned the wheel. His foot eased off the accelerator. His truck took exit 25. The off-ramp was different from normal exits. It didn't lead to a cross street or service road. It simply continued, a smooth 2-lane highway that stretched away into darkness. No lights marked it. No signs indicated destinations. Just pavement unrolling into infinite night. Victor drove. His headlights illuminated the road ahead, but somehow there were no mile markers, no landmarks, nothing but the highway itself. The darkness on either side wasn't normal night darkness. It was absolute, total absence of light, as if the highway existed in a void. But Victor didn't feel afraid. He felt peaceful. His truck hummed smoothly. His gauges read normal. The road unfolded ahead, and for the first time in years, Victor didn't know where it led. He was exploring again, discovering again, experiencing the highway as mystery rather than routine. Time stopped meaning anything. Victor might have driven for hours or minutes, impossible to tell without external reference points. But eventually he saw light ahead. A truck stop appeared. An old-style place that looked like the stops Victor remembered from the 70s. Gas pumps from that era, a small restaurant building, several trucks parked in the lot. Victor pulled in, parking his Peterbilt among the other trucks. He climbed down from the cab, his 68-year-old body feeling strangely light and pain-free. The arthritis that had plagued his knees for a decade was gone. The chronic back pain from years of sitting had vanished. Other drivers stood around the trucks, talking, smoking, laughing. Victor recognized several faces, drivers he'd known over the years who'd died. Eddie Morrison, who'd had a stroke at a way station in 1998. Carl Henderson, who died in a wreck on black ice in 2003. Tom Wu, who'd had a heart attack in 2015 while unloading. All of them here looking healthy and whole and happy. Eddie saw Victor and grinned. Victor Castellano, about damn time you showed up. We've been waiting for you. Got a whole crew ready for a convoy like you wouldn't believe. Victor smiled, understanding now where he was, what he'd chosen. This was the truck stop at the end of the highway. The place where drivers came when their final run was complete. The lot where trucks were parked forever, where stories were told endlessly, where the brotherhood of the road continued beyond death. Where are we headed? Victor asked. Everywhere, Tom Wu said. Anywhere. Forever highways, man. No schedules, no deadlines, no logbooks, just driving for the sake of driving. The road eternal. Victor looked back at his Peterbilt. It looked different now, cleaner, newer, somehow more essential. Not a machine, but an extension of himself, the form his spirit took in this place beyond places. Let's roll, Victor said. "I've got 43 years of road stories to share, an eternity to drive them." The convoy formed. A dozen trucks, drivers who'd loved the highway enough to choose this, to keep driving even after death took their bodies. They pulled out of the truck stop, engines roaring in harmony, Jake brakes singing, heading down a highway that had no end, no destination, no purpose except the pure joy of motion and freedom and the endless unrolling road. In St. Louis the next morning, warehouse workers found Victor's truck parked perfectly at the loading dock, cargo intact and properly delivered. Victor sat in the driver's seat, peaceful and still, gone from a massive heart attack that had killed him instantly. The company mourned. His wife grieved. His grandchildren cried at the funeral. But some of the old-timers, the drivers who'd known Victor for decades, smiled through their tears. Talk about his love for the road, his need to keep moving, his restlessness whenever he tried to settle down. They knew Victor had died exactly how he would have wanted, behind the wheel, making a delivery, staying faithful to the road until the very last moment. And late at night, old-timer drivers are running lonely highways through dark territory. Sometimes they swear they see a convoy in their mirrors. Old-style trucks, vintage models that shouldn't still be running, driven by silhouettes that look familiar. They see them for just a moment, running parallel on some road, sideways to normal highways, before they fade back into whatever holds them. Victor's final run never really ended. It just transitioned into something different, something eternal. He's out there still, driving forever highways with fellow travelers who couldn't give up the road when mortality tried to stop them. Because for some people, the highway isn't just a job or a career. It's a calling that transcends life itself, continuing into whatever comes after, rolling on forever through distances that have no measure and destinations that need no names.